e os futuros que idealizamos. Cultura transcende barreiras, conecta corações, transforma realidades. Acreditar na energia que vem da cultura é acreditar que as histórias transformam os palcos, os ritmos e os cantos desse país. São nessas histórias que encontramos a alma e a diversidade de um povo. Celebramos essa diversidade, celebramos cada cor, cada voz, cada sorriso e cada emoção. A cultura é reflexo dos nossos sonhos. Investimos nesses sonhos há mais de 60 anos, porque acreditamos que a energia que vem da gente é a energia que impulsiona vidas. Shell, energia que vem da cultura. Onde tem cultura, a Vale está. O poder criativo que nasce dos palcos, orquestras, das artes, das ruas e dos museus. Na valorização das diversas identidades brasileiras e na preservação de memórias. Onde toca um instrumento, o futuro desperta. Nas trocas de saberes, somos e oportunidades contagiosas.
Se eu tivesse saído, eu tirava para ti.
Os projetos que todo mundo conhece, aos que todo mundo precisa conhecer, é valorizando a cultura que crescemos e evoluímos juntos. Instituto Cultural Vale.
Dizer que o Brasil é gigante não é nenhum exagero, mas um país desse tamanho não se move sozinho. Ele conta com mais de 200 milhões de gigantes, como eu e você. Gigantes que saem cedo de casa todos os dias, com força, dedicação, coragem, pelos trilhos, estradas ou aeroportos. Gigantes que não diminuem diante dos desafios e não têm medo de distâncias, nem do longo caminho até os sonhos acontecerem. Por isso, só uma gigante como a CCR poderia estar ao lado dos brasileiros no desafio de mover este país. A CCR, 25 anos, movendo o Brasil para gigantes.
Mais uma vez aqui no palco, vendo esse...
Once more on the stage, seeing this great Quilombo happening. So we had on the stage the strong voices of Natata Felix, Cristiana Sobral, and our dear Dalvarra breaking everything and demonstrated what is a Quilombo. Quilombo is not only a place to escape, but also to strengthen, to organize, and to, of course, create. And that's what we are seeing here today, and we are very proud of it. So, continue our attractions. The debate we're going to see right now thinks about the strategy to assure life, sustainability, and the concentration in who historically take care and it's not taken care of. Collectives, quilombos, were formed as a space to restore Black people, LGBTQ, but it's still insufficient. For the Mesa O Ori and the Periferias that has the creatorship of Duda Nascimento, we are going to receive a spectacular women that transforms the ways of living. Psychologist, professor of the National Institute in Rio de Janeiro, Jaqueline Gomes de Jesus, Aked de Ile Gomes de Aro activist, Lúcia Xavier, and member of the movement Mothers of Muguinha, Ada Wade Oliveira. The journalist co-founder is going to be the mediator, Semar Oliveira. Welcome. What a strong panel. Black women going up the stage and speaking out. Of course, I try to grab a kiss from everyone that comes to the stage. Good evening. Good evening, Rio de Janeiro. Good evening. We have started with a very nice energy here. So we are arriving here today. We ask permission to start a very urgent and potent panel, and to start together with Beatriz Nascimento that we are paying tribute this year. The name of this panel is Ori and the Peripheries. And there is a documentary narrated by with a text of Beatriz Nascimento that has a lot to do with what we're going to talk. Beatriz says, at this moment, the use of the term Quilombo has an ideological use in the sense of aggregation, community, struggle, acknowledging that we are people that must fight for better conditions of life, because we deserve this as part of the society, although sometimes it doesn't seem that it is like that. So we have this wonderful composition, Mekege, having Ori in the name of our panel. I like to open with Mekege, Mr. Xavier defining Ori, to know a little bit more about the power we are talking about. No sound in her microphone. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to greet Ana Paula, Anaya for this panel, all the comrades here present. It's a pleasure to be here, taking part of these discussions, considering the work and political activism and celebrating the existence of Beatriz Nascimento. These are very special moments that has a lot to do with this idea of Ori, periphery. As Semael said, I have a very important task here for the ones who know what it means and for the ones who don't know. I am a Criolla, I'm a co-founder of Criolla, and I'm also an Ikedi, a religious house of Ularie in Nova Iguaçu, was founded by Beta Diemanjá. So when I came here, I brought two nieces. They are around here. Yeah, they are there. And they are high-end. And one of them told me, oh, yes, we have to take care of the mental health. So I refused, but now I really have to attend their request. And we have to talk about our tradition. It's not everybody's tradition, because one thing that we Brazilian women did was to build a space for all ideas, all experiences, both conceptions of word, tradition, experience, and certainly someone can hear and say, no, in my house it's not like this. Feel comfortable, because there can be. This is a portrait of my perception of Ori. That's why I write down some notes so as not to slip. So in the Afro-Brazilian religions, Ori is an entity. It's taken care of. It's the first stage of any kind of religious and traditional initiation in the Afro-Brazilian religions. It's the head that introduces us all the other dynamics of life. The head keeps the emotions, imagination, desires, longings, ancestrality. That's where we see the experienced and also the character, what we do in life collectively, respect, political construction, and above all, our capacity to interact for the good, not necessarily a good not looking to hope, but consciousness of good, critical consciousness, and also belonging. So, Ilairia Pelé, they are figures of the Yoruba tradition that introduces themselves in this context. Only in this way, acknowledging our character, that we are going to become ancestors. Ancestrality is not for everybody. Ancestrality has to do with the political construction that each individual realizes in this world. So to love, to think, to build, to support, but it's more than this. The ones that build collectively. So Ori is existence. So the Ori goes beyond through the speech, through the pleasure, and also through the pain. That's how we acknowledge ourselves and our capacity. Ori is political. It's the Ori that is going to build all the process of relationships that we develop in life for our society, for our country, for the world. Ori is what makes us knowledgeable and recognized, at the same time loved, hated, welcomed, embraced. All these perspectives that life presents us, Ori is what it is. Ori is not an entity that is in a perfectioning process. Ori is what we build in all the process of our life. So when we look at Ana Paula, we see a whole person that is in a certain way represented by her Ori. Ori is not only this head. Ori is what we expose that extrapolates our body to society, to the relationships. That's why it's constantly taken care of, because it's going to be the house of the Orisha. The Orisha chooses the Ori. So he's going to deal with these dynamics of ancestrality, love, affection, violence, and it's also going to transform. This is his best capacity to transform. I saw a tree, everyone sitting under the tree, hearing Lucia speaking. Wonderful. So let's invert the order. Then Jackie, then Lani, then Lucia. Share with us, because our panel is talking about mental health in the peripheries.
What do you define as health? What are better conditions of life? What's origin for us in this sense? Wake up from this bed. Stand up from of this bed, for the sake of Daisy, Ashe O. Thank you for welcoming here in this group, in this round table with Arcade, Anna. Once more, we are together. We had our conversations about Black women in the central place to think the center role of Black women when discussing health, mental health. And I'd like to start saying this. When people in this culture that we live, chauvinist, racist, society of classes. When they think about us, they think about us as a part, as Lily said when she was studying about racism and sexism in the Brazilian culture. Black woman as a part, as a partial object, a butt, not as a head, not as a heart, not as a spirit. And as you mentioned before, without considering this as a whole, without these fragmentations created by the Christian tradition, Judeo-Christian tradition, we see sickness, which is a part of this society. And not only in Brazil, it's a part of it. This is a way how the west part of the world was built, and this logic of life and work, remembering our fight against the 6/1 scale. And we had this slavery logic of 7/0 scale. Doesn't mean that this challenge does not exist, even though slavery does not exist anymore in that sense. It's a project. And in our majority, especially black women, which are demographically the majority in Brazil, this is a project above all. For us to have a crowd of women who could, create a revolution that scares the elites, that we have conditions to keep ourselves, to sustain ourselves. So we have our suffering as human beings, as people, as person. And sometimes we don't have a support, and we don't have a sort of protection in maternity terms. It's an exploration project. Beyond creating the idea of solitude, I was participating in another panel. We were discussing about this, that for cultures that came before us, there was no sense. Solitude did not make sense. This is something that's ours, and this is a tool of disempowerment within a political and a psychological game. What we have been doing, and I'm gonna start talking about history, is given. And what are we doing to face it? If during the colonial period, when we were sick, when our ancestors had to drink alcohol, use some substances, and that settler wanted to control us and use a mask of Flanders leaves, that Anastasia mask, with that cruelty, and saying that cruelty would cure, they created other forms of resistance, representing the terreiro, the quilombo, the collectiveness, the art. We created Brazilian culture. The black culture is the Brazilian culture. If you get the black part out, you don't have much of our Brazilian culture. So with due respect to all other cultures. So many forms of resistance were created regarding mental health, taking care of Ori, even if they were not using those terms. We are using new terms such as mental health, and even for old sicknesses. We are talking about depression, and this is the most common mental health issue in the workplace right now, nowadays. There's a way of living that leads us to depression in this planet. And we can learn with our sensors, with new strategies that we have, what can we do to take care of ourselves, coming out of the solitude place that says that we have to solve problems alone, to a collective experience. How can I strengthen communities? You're in bubbles, How can we make these bubbles get mixed? You know, you don't have only one bubble alone. How can you stimulate what we call mental health, which is good living? A good living with the possibility that's not the one we had before. It's not possible to leave that, go back to that context. Okay, again, we are challenged to create more forms of mental health. And inside university, they haven't found answers. They are still being elaborated. We have the strategies used in other moments, but for the moment we are living now, we still have to think about it and propose ways to deal with this problem. So it's all related to solitude and how to deal with solitude, because you cannot run away. It's our dilemma now as individuals in this contemporary part of history. How do we live with it in the same way as we strengthen communities within an economy that requires us to be empowered, that we should not fail, otherwise it's our responsibility if we fail, you know? How do we do it? I think it encompasses a lot of factors. You know, we still have to build better answers, but in the end, we have to want to be happy. Not all, it's not enough only in terms of psychological terms. It's important, but it's not enough. So if we don't work together to find strategies to strengthen our communities, and from my perspective, if we can get together, you know, especially us that were not, you know, rich, with a rich family, we have to strengthen ourselves because it's a mental health struggle, you know. So this dimension is really curious, and we're always facing ourselves. And I'd like you to share your vision, your perspective. What do you think it's good living? You know, achieve better life conditions for us, for our community. Well, first of all, good afternoon. I would like to thank you for the invitation of being here. It's a great pleasure to be here and learn with you. And being here and being able to share some parts of my experience. And I was wondering what I could say. I'm not even a writer, you know. Um, so analyzing everything, I think we write stories with our actions, not only writing with pen and paper, but how do what do we do, you know? What we have been doing collectively. We leave a legacy, write stories, yes. So I mean, answering your question, what's to live well? What's to have health? For me, it's hard to answer because I still haven't found, in this 48 years, I haven't found this good living. Where I was born, living where I live now, if you don't know me, I am Ana Paula Oliveira. I live in the Manguinhos slum, Manguinhos favela. This is where I was born. I am mother of two kids. In 2014, I had Jonathan, my son, who was violently murdered with a shot in his back, shot by a policeman that was working at the UPP, the pacifier police of Manguinhos. This policeman has already been sued by triple homicide, and at that moment I thought I was going to die. You know, I couldn't just see myself in this world without my son. It was part of me, and I was wondering, why did they do this to my son? Why did they shoot my son? And I found this answer 1 month after, when I left Manguinhos and went to meet other mothers in a demonstration in Chapéu Mangueira. It was a demonstration, you know. Jonathan was murdered in 2014. The World Cup, Brazil was receiving the World Cup. The world had eyes turned on us, and inside favelas, people were incarcerated, people were disappearing and being murdered. And I went to this demonstration 1 month after my son was murdered, and there was this sign when it was written, "The body in the stadiums are not worth the tears in favelas." And at that time, I had the answer I was looking for. Why did police murder my son? And when I find other mothers, other women, black like me, from Baixada and other slums in Rio, and I see the t-shirts they were wearing with the faces of black kids like my son. And there I started to understand that our sons are murdered because they live where they live and because they have that color and the color of their skin, you know. And that brought me sadness, and but at the same time the strength to go on fighting for the minimum, which is justice. Justice that is really far from us. But I usually say that for us, poor people living in favelas and peripheries, they act differently, you know? So when we have a part of us that is taken away, our sons, our sacred parts, you cannot live well. And I'm looking for this good living, and this been looking for it during these 10 years. As our master Lucia said, taking care of this Ori, trying to collectively with other people, did something better, give my best. And the fact that we lost a kid, that does not prevent us to lose others, other beloved people in our families. In 2014, we created the Manguinhos Mothers Movement, and this, with the goal to welcome other mothers, other families going through the same situation, and also aiming at creating a political movement with formation with these women. They do not understand why we suffer so much violence, and they always replicate this lie of, you know, lost bullet, or policemen are not well trained. They didn't have time to be well trained, and we have to stop using these reasons, these lies, because when mothers are separated from their kids, you know, this is not happening only now. It's been happening for a long time. Mothers have their kids taken away. Black women have always been prevented from living with their kids and breastfeed because they needed to give their milk to the sons of the white women. So now they break into the favelas, take our sons away because they say that they are the problems in society. And we know where the problem lies. It's that the problem is that people there in Brazilian governing our country, not the favela. The favelas are criminalized. Favelas are criminalized and re-victimized daily. And tomorrow we're gonna meet, have an audience for the law that is being judged in Brasilia. Mothers representing mothers of Manguinho, representing other states and movements that had their sons incarcerated and murdered. They will be going to Brasilia, and they have already left to Brasilia to strengthen this fight. DPS 635 does not prevent police to act. What we want is that they follow what's written there in the law. The police has to have the same behavior when they go to the rich parts of the neighborhood, and do not criminalize people there. When they go to the rich buildings, they knock the door and they ask to get in. They do not break into. They don't break into people's house causing terror. That's what we want. DPS 365 is this. It's very hard, spend 10 years fighting, struggling, trying to condemn them, a policeman who murdered my son, because if it were the opposite, we would be already arrested. We would be already in jail. But when it's a policeman, they have the permission of the justice to kill. And in the case of my son, it wasn't different. The policeman shot 7 times, and one of them hit my son in the back, and the popular jury understood that he didn't want to kill. He didn't have the intention to kill. And this popular jury happened now for the little Agatha Felix, a black child that was shot in the back too, because that's how they kill our kids. And the popular jury, which is formed by the society, understood that the policeman did not want to kill a child, an 8-year-old child. And that's how it goes. That's how it works, as if nothing had ever happened. So I always say that this struggle cannot belong only to mothers, but also it will only make sense and come to a result when all the society will be involved. If Agatha Felix, the 8-year-old child, lived in a rich building in our society, if she were white, would the policeman be absolved? Would the popular jury have the same sentence or the same vision, the same perspective? That's what I ask myself. So we will always be able to live well when we'll be able to live in a state that guarantees the rights for black people, poor people living in outskirts and peripheries. And we won't step back. We are torn apart, but we have our fists closed. Our sons won't come back, but we are fighting for the life of other black sons, poor, from the outskirts. Yes. Anna, thank you very much. Anna touches all of us, moves us all, especially because we were we're having a conversation before. It's impossible not to feel hate at a certain moment in your life when you're black in this country. Imagine left alone the pain of losing your son and go on living with violence. Even without health, black mothers, black people have the dignity to organize themselves in their hate, and it's not easy to fight for justice in a very just way and deal with injustice. So the movements of mothers in Brazil, this is the most revolutionary thing and that pushes us forward. So thank you for your fight, for your struggle, for your persistence, because this is not healthy. But the strength that you have to organize yourselves within this pain to fight in a very just way against everything that we see in the country, really need to honor you and praise you. So thank you for going on firmly. Lucia, so in the face of all of this, I think we have a challenge to talk about your perspective regarding Criolla, besides these women that went to our school, who were the first ones. I told you, Jurema a hug, and that's how I started to understand the black women's condition in Brazil. The reports that you were organizing together with Gileadas. What do you think are best living conditions according to you as an Ekedi? Look, would start with freedom, because freedom is something fundamental in the sense of you are able to participate in all processes in life. Without this freedom, we wouldn't be able to have the life that we want, the one we have the right to. I'm not talking about the freedom of coming and going or saying I am what I am, but that aspect that makes us feel human and that makes other people recognize humanity in us. Without this recognition of our humanity, without restructuring the relationships that we have within this human trace, and it's impossible. So it's freedom is to run away from subjection to violence, run away from violence. And I'd say that Black women are very good at that because they're always building spaces where they can escape from all the problems and to create possibilities. That's what makes Ana Paula, when she brings her own story, that's it. She could dive into this pain, but she escaped. She escaped from this prison and recognized the dynamics that this violence produces, saying that it has a name, it has a direction, it will be happening every time, but I don't subject myself to it. So I think freedom is this thing, this level that brings an Apollo to us and makes freedom worth it, coupled with another principle, not the one that white people say about responsibility, freedom without responsibility and without collective perspective. Now, as the poet says, not everyone has freedom. We want food, what we want to study, we want better conditions for living, and want to bring to this country the life experience that we built here. We've built a life that indeed brings this dimension of humanity, maybe the most perfect in within the chaos that we live, because we understand each other, because we recognize and treat collectively the issues from all the perspectives we have without forgetting who we are. So even when we have our individual dynamics, we know that it is necessary to go through this collective process. That's why Ana Paula stands up and go meet other women, because she could have stayed alone looking for her own justice. And like her, many other Black women do the same every day. Looks like a lot of solitude, a lot of a fight that someone is fighting alone. But every day this process is being built, a lonely fight, but it's not. It's built collectively. We're building knowledge together. And, moving out from this poetic aspect, to have conditions for living, you have to redistribute the richness of this country, which is concentrated on the hands of few, that use part of this richness to oppress us, to make us work more, be more profitable, and they do not give us back anything. So this dimension cannot be thought as only Bolsa Familia. It's a good policy, nothing against it, but it's not only about it. Everything that was created in this country is still created by us, but what do we receive in exchange? We're being shot, bullets, bombs. So we need to reclaim this reparation in this process. And I'm not talking about policies with more money, but giving back the richness that was produced by us and that we cannot reach, and that imprisons us of this in this way of living. because for sure, each one of us, and we are in front of Ana Paula, it's unfair to say this, but each one of us has a journey of loss. And today it's so hard to find someone that has not had a relative that was murdered by the police or is not arrested, is not suffering because of drug abuse, that hasn't had someone dying within the public health system. It's so hard to keep ourselves alive, you know? I'm going to bring two dimensions that are complex. This maternity institute, which is strange. I've never had kids and I won't have them, but this institution of maternity created by Black women makes so that they establish this collective process as a welcoming process, a comforting process. Things that I wouldn't even welcome, but they do it and they reconduct this process of living so that these people can move on their journey, in their journey, moving on, changing the effects of these traumas, the effect of these violences, taking care so that they will be part of this reality as part of nature. As an animal, as a plant, no. As part of a nature, if someone looks at a park full of trees, they are all different. And they are not together, you know, they are not stick together. If they are stick together, it's probably a company planting eucalyptus. But if they're not planted intentionally, if they are natural, they have their space, they establish their connections. Some of them don't get sun, some get more sun than others, but they establish this equal relationship or almost equal. In our case, there's no equality. We live for conditions for living, for survival, and there's also our mental health issues. And we're looking for conditions, living conditions for everyone. That's why we offer this change in the patterns of visibility. We have built, even though we have violence, we've built a pattern for good living. And that's why we say that this pattern might have its, problems, defects, but it's much more human than the pattern that we have today. So if we want to have better conditions of living, we have to exert power in this country, and we don't. We are those who still carry, as in the ship, all the possibilities of, being profitable to people, making people be more cruel, and without anything returning to us, without possibility for us. And I am sure that with this example that Ana Paula gave, we don't have peace. It's not only the continuous pain of loss, but the violence that we keep facing, even though we are only asking for justice. So our living condition needs to eliminate violence. And this is not any violence. It's a systemic violence produced by the patriarchal violence, by the patriarchal system, heteronormative, that implicates our relations in general, work relationships, education relationships, care in health. It's basically, I would say, a violent game all the time. There's no one single moment or condition in which we can say, okay, I've been through this calmly. The other day I was doing a comparison. As I was watching the Olympics and the bus stop, I was thinking, oh my gosh, the Olympics are here. And the guy, makes a sign for the bus to stop and then it has to run. because if he does not run, he will lose the bus and he will, lose points in the exam if he is late. And I thought, this is not a normal Olympics. He has obstacles. He has to, overcome obstacles and run in the same moment, and then he can all this to get, to get to the bus, enter the bus, and take 2-3 hours standing in his feet in the bus. And now I'm not taking the train, but train is fantastic because we learn a lot in there. Have you ever seen anything more violent than a train with the press? And you have the seller, the informal seller, the abusers, and even though these people can, have a normal life, sing, talk about people's life, talk about politics, everything inside the train. And this condition of persistence to have life, persist to live, this is not common, not normal. And it has to do with our Ori. The same Ori that brought Beatriz Nascimento in the 80s, just as other things that she was building throughout time when Criolo dança, and makes us reflect upon it. The capacity that people have to, in face of a process, and I'm not talking about pure resilience because people are also mad. I also get mad and irritated, but the capacity to still produce life with health, happiness, and justice for a society that denies it to them every time, 24 hours a day, year by year, although they take care of this society, support it, and bring happiness, bring good results. And sometimes I am a kid, but sometimes I don't. But I don't lose my temper. I start to think this white person that prays for the Orisha. How can she not pay correctly her domestic worker? What is she doing here? Praying to the Orisha, for a black entity. This entity is black. Maybe in her head, no, but it's black. And it gets irritated too. And I stay there, no, can't say that because I am a kid. I have to think positive things for people. But what is this person doing to be good? Is this person going to be my ancestral? Oh my God! When my mother was living, my Beata sometimes I would say this to her. I'd say, Mom, this person. And sometimes we had to recognize humanity in people because sometimes we want just to, extinguish, erase humanity.
Gente, vocês estão gostando tanto quanto eu?
So, are you enjoying as much as I am? So, please tell me the time. I could stay here for hours, just joking. Jaque, I'd like to call you a little bit because you are a researcher in the health field of LGBTQ+. And I'd like you to bring how these support networks organize themselves. And also the case of Strondosa that was killed in a violent way. And I think, I think there are two topics that are very connected here. I was speaking here and whispering. And when we were in the dressing room, they called Anna. So I think it has to do with what you are bringing to us to this discussion, that it's justice, lack of justice. This really moves me, even if we don't talk too much. It affects us because we know, we feel, and we know, and this is not right. The injustice. We have to acknowledge that this injustice is directly linked to the power. It's unjust because our power, the power, is unjust. The ones in the power. So we can see this representation and resistance against what we call an illusion, but I'd better call it a mirage. Life is not fair. And anyways, we human beings with our resistance in waking up every morning is to go after this mirage, which is justice. Talking about mental health, even if we don't have, we're going after it. And for the population LGBT, Maya, we have a great history of doing everything we can to preserve our health. So we have a movement of about 45 years, but we have others that are a lot older. When we are using LGBT, we use a terminology was not used before. Kujina, that called it the trans, chimbira, how they called gay. And of course, we have only in Brazil. No matter the name, we lived a period in which, talking about the connection of capitalism with this, in which gender idea was affected by a racist gaze, also a gender gaze over the humanity, over which persons are ideal. The ideal is white, cis, hetero. This is the ideal human being, and we are not this. So even this way, with all the death and suffering, we have built alternatives. I always say, our ancestors, we try to rebuild their memories because we just have reparation with memory. There is no other way of reparation. We cannot bring back these people, but we can bring back the memory. And the memory without a historiography, they are not in the registries, not even in the church, in the state archives. So we need to recreate this memory. So this moment is to rebuild, is there to rebuild this history. It's going to be on the stage, in the music, in the theater presentations. Every day we build our references. Even if we don't believe, we still need this reference of something or someone representing an idea. Shikamani Congo, a trans woman from the 16th century in Salvador that was accused by the Inquisition and maintaining the dressings of this tradition that was a feminine dressing. It didn't exist, Manuelinas, and there wasn't this crime of being a trans. So these women, these feminine figures, diverse figures at the time, was put in this word that was a travesty, travestite. Because in the African way of thinking, it wasn't to overdress, it was to reveal what you were inside. So it was a way of saying, hey, you cannot exist, you are too much. So the LGBT population is living this all the time, every day. You cannot separate this experience of being Black and LGBT because it's together connected. Usually I talk to middle class people, and we talk about affectivity, and we talk about the loneliness of the Black woman, of the trans woman. So we talk about this, the loneliness of the femininity, the diverse ones. So it's a way of saying that we are not going after a man, a macho. It's not this the issue. It's that there is an economy of the affections. And these women, especially when they are Black, they are not there on the shelves to be exposed. They are in the back of the corridor to be used in a hidden way. So, of course, we don't want to be bought by a macho. But we need to leave this logic and understand our faith is important. Our affection must be revealed. We have been working our affectivity. But also other people, they are not us. They take part of this through a responsibility. It doesn't mean that you're going to love me or any other person, but it's a collective responsibility. And it's difficult because the privileged ones, the ones who live the privilege, they are not moved to leave this place. And in the LGBT phobia, there is still a way of thinking, oh, poor LGBT, so unhappy, let's take care of them. Oh, nice, I accept, but hide yourself. So the great challenge is, first, our ancestors have created ways of resistance before the public politics. We didn't have this health issue in the public policies. The ones who organized were the groups, the collectives. For example, the ones in the prostitution houses, they could go to... So it's a form of existence, creating a community, observing that we are in Lapa, of a neighborhood for the trans, where we could exist, or creating new technologies. For example, it's not well advanced. We still have to advance health technology for the LGBT population. If you look at the WHO, in the classification of diseases, there is no specific codes for the trans population, but there are codes to refer to trans people. I'm not entering this discussion because it's going to be more half an hour. But basically, the concern is to classify people, then to create a code, a stereotype. For example, transgender surgery. There's no code. They have 10 different codes for a doctor to make a procedure of transgender or something more of routine, specific of trans men or trans women. There's no code of that. So this technology, it has not been defined completely by the academy. So trans women, trans men, they can criticize the mistake, but it has to be developed. It's also health promotion and creates a space of resistance in the politics. We have the house in a publicity that we are important. We really have to say to these families that when they act as a gender phobia, LGBT phobia, they kill us. So this is very rare. We need to inform these families. We need to touch these persons. We need to affect these persons. This is going to be public policies. It's going to make a difference to diminish the figures that we have. more than 92% of this new generation mutilates themselves. And just to conclude, we have this SMILES research of mental health. Here in Brazil, I am identifying that 44% of LGBT suffers of PTSD. So we live a trauma. Trans, lesbians, they are raped. The gays, they suffer aggressions and everything. And we don't have a solution for this problem, a therapeutical movement, and this trauma repeats. So it's important to have the figures, but also sensibilize. We need to be there. It's not only discourse. We need money for public policy. So in this sense, to say that the LGBT, they are important, that when we position ourselves, it's not only for us as a minority, but also for you, for everybody. We are saying we're talking about how human beings understand themselves in this planet.
A gente tem aqui.
Now we have 20 minutes maximum. Going to address two questions, one to Lucia, and then maybe others to close. Anna, you said before about the importance of the relationship with mothers and women that have the same pain, go through the same process. We were talking about a little bit, this happening now. We got this case, your son. What's the importance of this for you to retrofeed yourself with energy, this relationship amongst you and your other families? We brought this case, this issue of mental health, because many mothers that we welcome, that we receive, they avoid to go to the doctor because they are afraid of being re-victimized, And why? Because professionals in mental health, they are sick too. And often they do not understand why that mother that before losing a son or having a son incarcerated were not showing these symptoms such as high blood pressure, diabetes, loss of memory. This is something they report a lot. Anxiety, panic syndrome. So also this medication cycle, mothers, often these mothers look for other ways of taking care with herself and their mental health. And many others like me find in this fight, in this activism, this way of feeding themselves, strengthening themselves collectively, because I think that other people, imagine, and only by imagine it's painful, but you can only understand other mother had a son murdered and, arrested or missing. It's important for us to be together. We have managed through our struggle and discussing these issues not only in Rio but with mothers in other places in Brazil that are building this fight, taking care of mothers in other states. And here in Rio, we had AVE, a network to assist victims of violence, state violence, and 100 mothers achieved, funding by producing knowledge, and institutions and the society need to see us as producers of knowledge, because many want to talk about police violence, sickness, but only we can say of what we're living, what we're going through, and we know what we changed. We need to change this. We need public policies that will suit our experiences or are designed to our experience, our struggles. So thinking about the collectiveness, HAV was an achievement that came as a result of our fight together with the government, with universities, and now we have 100 mothers that receive a scholarship as researchers. They will receive a diploma. And what's the aim? What's the goal of this project, of? And the final goal is it to become a public policy and will be spread to other states, creating spaces where these women can be, received, welcomed, can cry together and think together and create public policies where they can also, train themselves mutually, where you have training. And I think that's how we get stronger. So many mothers that are not part of any collective or movement, and they were there alone. Now they are part of this network. And they start to, act, be in this fight. It's not necessary that this mother will be there, but we're aim mainly at getting them out of this solitude place where they think eventually of killing themselves, but being together, comfort each other and gather forces and strengthen each other, and thinking about how we can go on being the mothers of our sons within this situation. How can we exert our maternity? How we can exercise our maternity within this activism, fighting for memory, fighting for the life of other sons that are not our blood sons, biological ones, but are other sons, and understand that we can be strong in this sense. Thank you, Anna. Lucia, I'd like you to elaborate a little bit about, again, I'm going to African Brazilian religions. We have Lucia. But because Brazil is a very religious country and we see this in politics, we see many disputes happening. We know that Candomblé Terreiro is a place that's been there for us in centuries and for other groups, but people just don't say anything. But that's where you go, you organize yourselves, people leave those places silent, This Yalaro Risha, in this religion, the women are the great guardians. What's the importance of this figure for our health? At the same time, there are women that have to deal daily with intolerance and violence. You were exploring my religious side. I think Jurema should answer. I think Jurema has to go back and sit down here, because she's, looking at you, and at me, so we're like in a triangle here. It's not that I wanted to praise her, it's just my boss. I'd like to introduce her to you. She's my boss. There is another one there that works with me besides her, because black women, they give us orders. I think the Yalorishas, and then I go back to Jurema, I'd say that they invented the world. Not necessarily the Yalorisha, but the black women, they invented the world. If you look at the Terreiro de Candomblé, They have a pantheon of 16 orishas, all of them completely different. One fighting with the other, one not speaking with the other, and they although they had this, they could bring all of them to the same residence, including us, and at the same time build a relationship of pacific living with them in the same terreiro, even though the song says that one has to fight the other. This dynamic is only possible because we are women. Other people wouldn't do it. They also built our roots, they created our roots. You have this origin. This is your first ancestral issue. Your other is a chassis. Until you arrive to your mother, your grandmother, they rooted us. They gave us conditions to understand ourselves as subjects, as person, as political subjects. At the same time, organized us economically, politically. And I'm talking about many generations that were organized via terreiros. At the same time, they taught us politics because they brought men to take care of the houses, organize the resources, provide for the houses. This was the role of organs. They had no liturgical role. They had to protect and fund. All the women were doing everything, but at the same time, they would also give place to this man, to fix the house and etc. and call them fathers, serve them. It was something, when you start, right there, your condition of black woman, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna serve anyone, but they would, with one goal, one objective, to protect, care, and have resources. And at the same time, they were taking care of these people, welcoming, accommodating people that had losses in their lives, feeling pain. They invented the world. They said, this is a whole mess. Let's start to organize this mess. And they have all their own scientificity. They have their science, They have their knowledge. And it's so deep that even today, except Jurema, other intellectuals are not able to understand what that means. They can even write that Yalorishas did organize, but they do not recognize the role, the political and social role in the construction of a society inside another society. And this society within another society resulted in many complex processes. I could mention the LGBT community, that we're never a community, but founding part, except when you have the white people, it changes. But it founded a community where black and white have the same position. Of course, that sometimes the white people have some roles that you don't understand why, but it's part of the process of funding, protection, and defending our community, because network is something that black women know what to do. They create networks with everyone, the baker, the doctor, everyone. In my house, if you want to support someone, just give a call to some people, We've been here for 40 years. We're a new terreiro, although my mother has been very old in this tradition, but it's all there, You find work there, you find health there. When everything closes, it's there you look for help. It's there where you create the politics to organize these women. They are domestic workers, they are doctors, they are politicians. They are the people who articulate all the process. I'm not talking about Jurema for nothing, because she will condense this in her studies, bringing the titles, Dialogues. They are the ones who established this communitarian relationship, political relation. And recently, one of the Mother Beata's daughters died. A young priest went to the funeral. We are from Candomblé, and this is tradition. And the priest decided that would speak during the funeral, and he started saying, "I am a priest because Mother Beata accepted me as I was." I couldn't understand what was my religious relation. I was afraid. I was, embarrassed. I had so many problems, and by talking to her, I decided to be a priest. And he was there at the funeral, and she started to talk about my Beata's daughter, talking about her strength, her capabilities. He didn't know. He didn't need to do it. It would make no difference because she was such a powerful woman with a prominent role. But she meant that black woman in her territory interfered in his process and made him become what he was. And now, when we go where my mother lives, if someone says, "Your mother did this for me," and Dona Beata did this, Dona Beata would buy the newspaper here, Dona Beata used my onion. This is just an example of the thousands of women that are in the world doing the same. And more than thinking about the capacity of political articulation and strength, thinking about what they have projected for the future. Some chose us to be ahead, to walk, to give steps ahead because we need this, because this is pivotal for moving on. We make so that this protection and care with our lives would go on. So, in a certain sense, they were the ones that brought us here. And within this example of the mothers of saints, the priestesses, I want to remember the domestic workers. Almost all of us were daughters of domestic workers, and they had the same articulation. They were in the tejeiro, they were in the samba, they were in all spaces where we could have political articulation for to change our lives. And sometimes I hear from people saying, but the domestic workers, they were so servants. And I think, have you ever worked in a white family's house? And you will understand what you're talking about. Someone that needed to, provide for her family and for other families that were part of their protection network. Someone who had to find work for you because this, a black person would never work in the state if there were no intervention, for instance. So they invented the world and these capabilities, like Ana Paula's, mine, Jacqueline's, of facing these barriers, these violences, and at the same time project the future. And that's all about this. They project the future, they take care of the future, foresee it until it's totally accomplished, because the mother goes, until works until the end of her life. She's active until the end of her life. And just want to say that this idea of women that are really powerful, that build the today thinking about tomorrow, that build today thinking about the past, and reviving experiences of the past. This is typical of black women. That's why it's so hard when we start the text that black women are 28% of the population and live hunger, violence, lack of conditions, because they are, in fact, what moves the life in this country. Thank you, Lucia. We have only 10 minutes. I'm gonna give you the last question. Ask you now to say goodbye. Sorry, we have to conclude this panel. The question is, where do you, re-energize? Taking a coffee on Sunday in the samba roda, in the school, samba school with your daughters. Where do you re-energize? Where do you recharge? To go back to this place of struggle. What's the place that embraces, that hugs you? We can start from this on with Jack. So I remember what we talked about before. You said, "Oh, Jacques, you do a lot of things," because she follows me on Instagram. Because I put only part of my life there, only the best part. And it's interesting because I told you so. Part of what I do, and it's a significant part, it's my work, would be something that will make you sick, because we talk about working days. And I see everything that I chose to do. I had the opportunity to have options and chose to, many different directions. I do what I want and I do them as a mission. This is try to promote help. What I said, I'm learning to say no. You know, not because I just don't want to, be sick because everything. So I'm trying to learn to deal with something that gives me pleasure, that helps me in my mental health, which is my job, my work. You know, teach, research, travel. This gives me pleasure. It's not just a rule. Not only give people a lecture fundamented in a research. The process is very nice and healthy. It's to promote health too. Look for help, for answers to questions that life brings to us, even if they are not definitive. They are promoting health. So we cannot stay here doing this only. I have to work on other dimensions of mental health, which is physical health. We don't promote mental health if we say only talking about the mind. Heart is important, body, sports, physical activities. I walk, I ride, I fight Muay Thai, I punch and I kick. I like to kick, it's really fun. It's to work on my balance, but in the sense of emotional balance. It's very nice, this sport thing, this activity. Have you seen I'm Still Here? Eu ainda estou aqui. The Brazilian one. It's worth it. We have to take care of our collective mental health. So I looked for these alternatives that are part of life that we forget. And my affection. One thing that I learned is that I'm very open to my affections. And because of our Christian tradition, we it's very hard to deal with affections, especially because you're judged, and especially if you're black and trans. There's this look of death. Santa Rosa is a counselor that was murdered these days, and we assume that it's a political crime. And usually people talk about death, death, death. And many places I go, many universities, and when the theme is trans, they talk about death. And what have you researched other than death? Because I am still here, not that. So what are we doing to be alive, to keep ourselves alive? You're not being alienated. You're looking at what's positive that led you here. And in this sense, I look for pleasure, affection, exercise this desire for life, for myself. Try to learn more to myself. This is a health thing. I teach fashion psychology. I'm in a field in the world. And I teach my students, majority are women, how are we taking care of our territory, our body, which is a territory? How do we take care of it? It's not only an issue of vanity in a negative sense. It is related to mental health because we are judged all the time because of our appearance. So that's what I'm looking for doing. And being with you here also promotes my mental health. Thank you. And you, Anna, who carries you? I think the fight, the struggle, because it saved me. Because uh, because it's a place I feel I can be closer to my son. There's a sense when I say that. Every time I talk about my son, I think I feel stronger. Yeah. And I feel he's closer to me. It's where I can be his mother. Talk about him, about what he is to me, about my love, about my pain. I always say we carry pain, but we also carry a lot of love. Because if it were only pain, we would have died already. And another moment that makes me strong, it's when I'm with my family, with my nephews and my nieces, my daughter. When I feel loved, I could be anywhere in the world, but if I don't have my family, I'm not okay. I'm not complete. And I could be anywhere in the world, but if I have my family and well and in peace, happy, that's what makes me feel good. What makes me strong, and that's why I fight so much. It's for our rights, to try to guarantee our rights. Thank you. Lucia. I think when I meet women, I think they're so creative, so hard sometimes, fantastic, but it's just inspiring. Even when we're mad at them, you say, oh my God, what a capacity. So the younger and the older ones, they are so creative, they are so analytical, they have such a incredible capacity of action to give themselves, in a very deep way. And there is Monica Cunha that doesn't make me lie. It's of a knowledge and courage, huge courage. But there are days in which I say, oh my God, I could have slept until late. But then I remember that I have a task and it has to do with this meeting with them. I have 10 people here. Sometimes I have 10 people to visit, But in the end, I think that I feel rewarded because one thing that we usually forget when we're fighting is the reciprocity. It cannot be with in the best moment, but it might come in another way when you receive a hug, when you are comforted by other women. Thank you, Lucia. Well, guys, we're concluding our beautiful panel, right? Standing ovation to them. Live long to Floop. Live long to our nights and our event.